welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm your co-host, Katie Halper, and
I'm Aaron Mate, sitting in for Matt Taibbi.
For a long time.
For a while,
get used to it.
Yeah.
He's here. He wants you to get used to it.
Stop writing me. Anywhere. It doesn't matter. I'm not leaving. Matt is writing a book. When he finishes the book, he'll be back. Until then, you got to deal with, you can call me Aaron Mate Taibbi. How about that?
Oh, I like that, Aaron Mate.
Is that a compromise? Is that a compromise?
Good.
Okay.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah. Did you just think of that on the spot?
No, I think, no, I've had that pun in the works for a long time.
Wow.
I workshopped
Even before you knew about replacing.
Oh yeah. Well, I used to watch Useful Idiots every single week, and I would just stare at the screen and picture myself in the co-host chair, and I would just say to myself over and over, I'm Aaron Mate Taibbi. I'm Aaron Mate Taibbi. Yeah.
You manifested it.
I manifested it. Exactly.
That's great. That's amazing. Well, we got a great show for you today. We have an amazing guest, Mansoor Adayfi, who is someone who spent 14 years in Guantanamo, and we are bringing you this show because it is the 20-year anniversary of the opening of Guantanamo. He has a great book, Don't Forget Us Here, Lost and Found in Guantanamo, that he's going to talk about. It sounds like it's a depressing chat, and there's a lot of very sad and disturbing stuff that we talk about, but he's such an inspiring and inspired person that it's actually an uplifting chat at the same time.
No, it's a pretty incredible story, and we're very fortunate to be able to talk to him and to, that he, first of all, survived to be able to tell this story, because as he talks about, other people that were with him in Guantanamo did not make it. And just the way he's been able to go through such hell and still come out of it the way he has is just, it's pretty incredible. And he has a lot to say. Yeah. And it's a pretty amazing conversation.
So let's go through the 4 basic food groups. The Democrats suck, Republicans suck. Isn't that weird? Isn't that terrible? So you got Dems this week, right?
I got Dems this week, and I had to go with the red carpet rollout for one Dick Cheney. Speaking of Guantanamo Bay, the vice president under George W. Bush, who oversaw the opening of Guantanamo, the kidnapping of so many people like our guest Mansoor, the torture of them, and of course the invasion of Iraq and other crimes. But because it was this week the anniversary of January 6th, which in the eyes of many Democrats these days, it seems to be a crime on the level of 9/11. Dick Cheney was welcomed at the Capitol with open arms because he's criticized Trump and has basically joined the neocon brigade of Republicans who don't like Trump, not because they care about his racism or his sexism or the fact that he broke the Iran nuclear deal and almost started a war with Iran and many other horrible things that Trump did. They don't like Trump because they don't think he's a suitable steward of the war machine that they've helped build. And Dick Cheney has been one of the key figures behind that. And Dick Cheney was welcomed with open arms at the Capitol this week. And as a headline in the Washington Post put it, Dick Cheney returns to the House and receives a warm welcome from Democrats. And that's what it was. There was a parade of Democrats going up to Dick Cheney to shake his hand on the House floor, all because he is joining his daughter, Liz, in standing up to the 3-hour riot that has been turned into one of the worst things that happened to the U.S. since 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. And for rehabilitating this unrepentant war criminal who, as Matt Taibbi points out in a great article this week on his Substack, has done far bigger damage to the world and U.S. democracy than even Donald Trump. For that, I say that Democrats suck. And I have a bonus part of Democrats Suck this week. It's related to January 6th. It's a tweet from Alex Rorty. And he talked about attending some focus groups where the topic of January 6th came up. He says, watch 2 focus groups with moderate voters last night put on by a liberal group. Moderator asked first group 5 women about January 6th. A long pause followed before one of the women asked what he meant, invoking January 6th didn't immediately mean anything, even days after the anniversary. So I just thought this was so funny because, for 4 years, what did Democrats talk about when Trump was in office? It was basically Russia, Russia, Russia. Then they pivoted to Ukraine and how we needed to arm Ukraine. And if we didn't, our country was going to be invaded by Russia. No matter what you think about the Trump Russia story, I think it's a safe bet that Russia and Ukraine are not the top concerns of the average American when they wake up in the morning, right? I think that's a fair bet, no matter where you stand on Trump or Russia or not. So now what do Democrats do after, Trump is no longer in office, the Russia thing didn't pan out. Now, basically, they're talking, if you turn on MSNBC or CNN, it's January 6th all the time. So finally, here's a window into an occasion where this is put to actual voters to see how they respond to this nonstop Democratic fixation. And invoking January 6th didn't immediately mean anything, even days after the anniversary. And the tweet thread goes on. The conversation didn't get much better from there for Dems in either focus group. Once the convo got going, it was clear January 6th hadn't been memory holed by the first group. But one woman said flat out it wasn't something she worried about anymore compared to other concerns. And two others, after agreeing how awful the attack was, said they thought Biden and Democrats had gone too far in the way they talked about it last week on the anniversary. One of the women said she thought that they had over embellished it. You don't say. So maybe talking nonstop about a riot at the Capitol and comparing it to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, where thousands of people died, is maybe over embellishing. And I just think it's such a funny window into just how disconnected Democrats are from the concerns of, the voters they're trying to reach in order to win, and what they instead choose to focus on.
Right. And I think it's an important point that you made, which is that, there's a lot of disagreement over how important and how significant and what it signifies when it comes to January 6th or Russia Gate. But what I think anyone fair-minded can acknowledge is that the disproportionate energy poured into that is not justifiable.
Hence why Democrats suck.
Yeah, hence why Democrats suck. Yeah, and another, we have to bring this up. Democrats suck because Gitmo is still open.
Yes, and they're meanwhile honoring one of the top architects of the so-called global war on terror that caged and tortured so many people there, Dick Cheney. And they're doing so in the name of trying to defend democracy.
Right. It's ridiculous. Yes. They are honoring a war criminal and his spawn.
Yeah.
So for Republicans suck, I have something that's, more of a cultural touchstone. This guy is not an elected official, but that's fine. We do this for Republicans suck or Democrats suck a lot. I just wanted to show this clip of Tucker Carlson.
So yesterday was Sunday. You may have found yourself on the couch, idly flipping around the TV dial. And if you flipped far enough, you could have had the shock of your life. Michael Jackson was on Face the Nation. Now, to be clear, this wasn't video of Michael Jackson performing his hit songs in the 1990s. This appeared to be a living version of the international pop star that news reports claim died of a drug OD more than a dozen years ago. And yet, despite those claims, there he was, fully, undeniably Michael Jackson talking on television. How can that be? Honestly, we have no idea. We're not theologians here. This is merely a news program. We can only show you what we saw. Here it is.
There's nothing more important for us to do than protect our Constitution and our democracy. What the Republicans are doing across the country is really a legislative continuation of what they did on January 6th, which is to undermine our democracy.
See? Michael Jackson. That was him. No Billie Jean. Apparently he's given up singing. Now he's telling lies about politics. Same man. If you've ever seen Michael Jackson, you cannot forget the face. Though admittedly, he's had a lot of work done since we saw him last.
Okay, so that was just Tucker Carlson really putting a lot of work into setting up a joke with very little payoff. I mean, I'm not a Nancy Pelosi fan. She's had a lot of work done. She looks nothing like Michael Jackson.
So the joke is just him making fun of Nancy Pelosi's appearance. That's it?
Yeah. That's just so, I mean, Wilson, you found this actually. You flagged this for me. What do you think about it? Why do you think
I love that he took so long to set it up, and then even after it finishes, he doesn't drop the joke. He still goes with it, and it's just so over the top.
It's such a bad joke. I mean, this
So
guy,
he's just
how many
making fun
views?
of her. He's just making fun of her
Yeah.
appearance. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah, nothing
political.
more.
No. I was
Okay.
expecting, I
No
was like, wait, is she
substance.
gonna say like I'm bad, you know it, or is like the way you make me? I thought there was gonna be some pun. Like,
Yeah,
no.
as it stands, that's one of the worst joke attempts I've ever seen.
Yeah,
It's so juvenile.
it's so juvenile, and there's nothing. I mean, doesn't he have people who maybe he's just surrounded by a bunch of yes men? No one was like, Tucker, that's not actually that funny, and there's no resemblance between the two of them. You may want to cut this bit, but Tucker, hey, we'll tell it to you. We'll give it to you straight here at Useful Idiots. You should workshop your jokes with us.
I mean, it's first of all, by the way, it's tough to pull off a good Michael Jackson joke these days
Yeah,
at all.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle does it. He has some great bits in his specials. Chris Rock, but Tucker Carlson, sorry, man, no.
No,
Yeah,
sorry.
this one did not fly. And then you're trying to make fun of a woman's looks. It's just
Yeah.
who still does that?
Yeah, who still does that?
Yeah.
I mean, not that he cares about being sexist and ageist, because you know he revels in rejecting those woke labels, or he rejects the problematization of those things. I'm sure, but still, it's just forget even that aside. Like, it's just stupid. It's just a fail. You're just not that I think he's not that funny. So he when he thinks of something that he thinks of as funny, it's like he really tickles himself. It really tickles him. Stick to your whatever baiting. Stick to your to the really good content you provide when you're serious. That's Republicans suck. Tuck.
Republicans suck with Tuck.
This episode is brought to you by the Jordan Harbinger Show. Want a new podcast to look forward to each week? One that's entertaining, informative, and packed with actionable content? Come on, of course you do. The average podcast listener has 6 shows in rotation, so you're most likely not just listening to Useful Idiots or, I don't know, whatever another podcast would be called. What's another podcast?
Well, we don't listen to PodSave. Nobody does that. Nobody listens to the Lincoln Project.
So you're most likely not just listening to Useful Idiots and some other terrible podcasts. And that's totally okay. In fact, I'd love to share a podcast to add to your list. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show, a top shelf podcast named Best of Apple in 2018. Guests include Anderson Cooper, Matthew McConaughey, Mark Cuban, and even Ulrich the Mole Larson. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting. There's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show. That's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit jordanharbinger.com/start.
I have Isn't That Weird this week. Fusing, two different worlds, two very important worlds are, our livestock and, virtual reality, the metaverse, 3D. Headline in the New York Post says, cows stuck indoors for winter are getting virtual reality goggles to feel like they're outside. Bring some innovation to the awful meat industry. It says cows cooped up for the winter are being fitted with virtual reality goggles so they think they are outside in a summer field, and the bamboozled bovines appear to be happier and producing more milk. This could be encouraging, Katie, for Mark Zuckerberg as he expands the metaverse.
Yeah, you're right.
To know that cows are happier and producing more milk as they enter the realm of virtual reality. Snaps of the experiment have been amusing film buffs on social media, where they have been compared to shots from sci-fi classic The Matrix. The movies show mankind living in a simulated reality while machines use their bodies as energy sources. That's right. Keanu Reeves stars as Neo, given a choice between taking a red pill to reveal the truth or a blue pill to forget the revelations. And one fan wrote, "You take the short grass, the story ends. You wake up in the pasture and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the long grass, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the human hole goes." And then we have some Matrix cow puns, like the Matrix re-uttered and the Mootrix re-uttered and the Mootrix ruminations. Brilliant. It's brilliant stuff.
the poor cows, they're so cute. And there's an image of one wearing these goggles. I wonder what kind of psychological studies they can, for humans, they can take this. They can
Well,
apply this.
rest assured, Mark Zuckerberg's all over it.
Right.
I mean, he wants that data. I wonder though if when you're ordering meat from now on, how you can order like organic beef only, like whether this will become an option if you only want to eat virtual reality.
Right. Exactly. I only eat
cows.
Virtual reality infused cows. Yeah.
That should become an option.
Yeah.
This could be a whole new field of the bovine industry.
Yeah, a whole new pasture.
A whole new pasture.
I mean, that's so sad because it just reminds us of how cows have feelings, so they really need to be treated better. Things
are so bad for cows that even virtual reality is an improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dark.
That's dark. Yeah, that just verges into, isn't that terrible? Well, we often do on the show, we kind of play with boundaries, and the terrible and weird often overlap and intersect because we're an intersectional show.
Yes.
So I'm going to go, speaking of which, I'm going to go to an Isn't That Terrible, which is kind of an Isn't That Weird. Screw it. LAPD cops hunted Pokemon instead of responding to robbery. Officers' 2017 hunt for Snorlax recorded by in-car system. Court upholds firing. So this is a story. This is very interesting. But before I get into the story, I got to ask something. How is this game played? This Pokemon Go searching for Snorlax played?
So in real life, there are Pokemon in different places, and you can see through your phone on the app where they are. So you can see that, over on First Ave, there is a Pikachu. And so you go and you can and you throw one of your Pokeballs at it like they do in Pokemon, and you can catch it and then you can collect. So it's in the show, they actually collect Pokemon. And so you can do that in real life. And that way, like Hillary Clinton says, you can Pokemon go to the polls.
That was amazing when she said, I don't know who invented Pokemon Go, but
I don't know who created Pokemon Go. But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
And that's why she won. I mean, that was the key. That was the key to her success in 2016 when she swept the election and gave us 4 years of an incredible presidency. And kudos to her for having the grace to step down and let Joe Biden take the helm after her great run.
So here's the thing. I just needed to get that background so that people would understand this. So a California appeals court has upheld the firings of 2 Los Angeles Police Department officers who failed to respond to a robbery in progress and instead went searching for Snorlax in the Pokemon Go augmented reality game. And they were being recorded by a digital in-car video system, DICVS, when they decided to catch a Pokemon after not responding to a robbery on Saturday, April 15, 2017, according to the California Court of Appeal ruling issued Friday. A board of rights found the officers, quote, guilty on multiple counts of misconduct, and, quote, based in part on the, quote, recording that captured petitioners willfully abdicating their duty to assist a commanding officer's response to a robbery in progress and playing a Pokemon mobile phone game while on duty, the ruling said. These 2 cops tried to push back, saying that the camera shouldn't be used against them because that's not what they're meant to record. But that didn't stand. And at first they lied. So they were investigated. They were asked about what they were doing during the robbery when they had radio call to respond to a robbery. They denied, first they said that they didn't hear it, but now we know that that's not true. After communications made a second attempt to contact petitioners, the petitioners are the 2 cops who were found guilty, to contact petitioners, Officer Lozano asked if they should, quote, ask communications if there is a message, end quote. Officer Mitchell replied, it's up to you, whatever you think. I don't want them to think we're not paying attention to the radio, end quote. Lozano responded, screw it, end quote. Petitioners made no attempt to respond over the radio when their unit was called. They, instead of going towards the robbery scene, they moved backwards through the alley and turned away from the mall where the robbery was occurring. Officer Mitchell alerted Lozano that Snorlax just popped up at 46 and Limert. After noting that Limert doesn't go all the way to 46, Lozano responded, oh, you know what I can do? I'll go down 11th and swing up on Crenshaw. I know that way I can get to it. For approximately the next 20 minutes, the DICVS captured petitioners discussing Pokemon as they drove to different locations where the virtual creatures apparently appeared on their mobile phones. On the way to the Snorlax location, Officer Mitchell alerted Officer Lozano that a, quote, togetic just popped up, noting it was on Crenshaw just south of 50th. After Mitchell apparently caught the Snorlax, exclaiming, "Got him," petitioners agreed to go get the togetic and drove off. When their car stopped again, the DICV's CBS recorded Mitchell saying, "Don't run away, don't run away," while Lozano described how he buried it and ultra balled the togetic before announcing, "Got him." Mitchell advised he was still trying to catch it, adding, "Holy crap, man, this thing is fighting the crap out of me." Eventually, Mitchell exclaimed, "Holy crap, finally," apparently in reference to capturing the togetic, and he remarked, the guys are going to be so jealous." So, Wilson, tell me what your thoughts are as someone who knows what these things mean. Is this a game? Is this just a social media moment? What are they doing here?
Well, I'm fully on the side of the cops. It's a Snorlax, Katie. You're gonna give up a Snorlax. You know more than anyone. You don't a Pikachu maybe,
but not a Snorlax.
Aaron, what do you think?
I see. The thing is, I don't understand actually what a Snorlax is.
Neither do I. I don't.
But then they should go out like heroes and just own that they were looking for that mythical creature, which they said. That's what I don't get. They said
Right. They should be the kings in jail.
Yeah. They insisted they did so both as part of an extra patrol and to chase this mythical creature. So if they were chasing this mythical creature, that's what they were doing. Even if it's not advertised as a game, it's a game, right?
Oh, yeah. Totally. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm torn because part of me likes this type of misconduct from cops. Like if all police misconduct could be limited to playing Pokemon, that would be great. If that's what their lives were about. Also, you know, I think cops probably, you know, maybe instead of fighting crime, they could actually do less damage if they were just playing Pokemon. Isn't that terrible? It's an example of real cowardice, I think.
For all that funding the police get, I wonder if there should be some money allocated for, you know, Pokemon Go addiction issues.
You're right.
You know,
You're right.
What if this is a, you know, widespread problem among all police forces? Like
right.
This is, you know,
and what if we should add funding for military grade equipment in the Pokemon universe?
That would help. That would always help.
Right. They feel less threatened.
Yes.
They feel safer in going after the Pokemon.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good callback to last week, Matt, when we talked about how, I think it was for Republican Suck, how there was a call for military grade equipment for the police in Virginia to help fight snow.
Help fight snow? Fight Snorkalax. Did I get the name right?
Snorlax.
Snorlax, yeah. What would be funny is if they'd been engaged in a high-speed chase after a suspect, and they were like, just 1 second. Let me just do this. Let me go down this street instead.
There is something still pretty cute about the story. The idea of these two cops being so into Pokemon Go. I mean, this is not like they're like, you know, dealing drugs on the side or firearms. They're playing Pokemon Go, and that's there's something charming about that.
If only that was the thing, the egregious behavior cops engaged in. So that's isn't that terrible? Or maybe isn't that adorable?
It is not adorable, yeah. Terrible / adorable.
I mean, I'll throw in a terrible, which is that Eric Adams, this also is Democrat Suck, and this is more serious than our terribles, but I feel like I'd be remiss to not mention the fact that the landlord, you know, we now know 17 people were killed in a fire in the Bronx on Sunday caused by a malfunctioning space heater that sparked a fire. The landlord was part of Eric Adams' transition team.
And they, instead of, you know, talking about the lack of safe, affordable housing, they're blaming the tenants.
They're blaming the tenants for having on a heater and for not closing their doors when actually the doors were supposed to be self-closing. There were heating issues in the apartment, which is why they were using that space heater in the first place. So, but that's the really scary part, I think, also that the landlord of the building is on Eric Adams' transition team. Isn't that terrible? And Democrats suck.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of sucky Democrats and a lot of terrible.
Yeah.
Out there, and they often go together.
Yeah. So that's it. Anything else? Any other stories you want to talk about from this week?
There's the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, and it looks like there are talks ongoing between the U.S. and Russia to resolve that. I'm sorry to disappoint many pundits in the U.S., but it doesn't look like there's going to be a war, at least for now. and I know that's a hard thing for people to swallow, Cold War advocates, neocons in Washington really want conflict for some reason to break out between the world's top nuclear powers. They really want the U.S. to, escalate its military support to Ukraine on top of the already massive amount of weapons that go there. But it looks like for now, there's not going to be a war. So I just want to express my condolences to neocons and their allies everywhere at this unfortunate extension of diplomacy. Although I'm not optimistic that anything will be resolved. In the words of the Washington Post, they interviewed this anonymous U.S. government official who specializes in Russia, and this official said that basically they think that Russia is interested in real dialogue, and Russia basically wants to see if the U.S. is willing to accept any constraints on U.S. power. And that's what, to me, this is about. It's not about whether Putin's going to conquer Ukraine, because I don't think Putin wants to do that. Why would he? And if he had wanted to do that, he could have done that by now, take over the parts of Ukraine that identify with Russia and the Donbass and that are fighting the Ukrainian government. I think it's about, Russia basically trying to see if the U.S. will stop using Ukraine as a bullet stopper, as a proxy in this new Cold War confrontation with Russia. And that would entail basically pledging to stop expanding NATO to Russia's borders, including by pledging not to admit Ukraine, and to not position U.S. weapons in countries like Ukraine. And we'll see if the U.S. can accept any of that. And if they do, I think it would be a good thing for world peace, but that would be a bad thing for weapons contractors and neocons in Washington. So we'll see if even something approaching that is acceptable to Biden. But what's funny is that right now too, there's this effort to stop this pipeline, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, going from Russia to Germany and the rest of Europe. And Ted Cruz right now has a measure that wants to just reimpose sanctions on Russia, Germany, and anybody else who takes part in this pipeline. And the Biden administration is actually lobbying Congress against it because, for the rest of Europe, if this goes through, it would be a nightmare because it would basically shut off this vital source of gas that comes from Russia to the rest of Europe, and people would suffer. Heating costs would rise and people would freeze. And so Germany is basically begging the U.S. not to do it, but people like Ted Cruz in Washington are so hell-bent on confrontation with Russia that that's all they care about. And the irony of Biden lobbying against this is that, again, this is another case where Biden has overall a softer stance on Russia than the Trump administration, which we were told from the Biden camp and others for 4 years was doing Russia's bidding because Trump was a Putin puppet. Right. In reality, Trump and his administration were hawks and dangerous hawks on Russia, ratcheting up confrontation. This is one more example of Biden doing something that if Trump had done, that would be seen as more evidence that he really is being blackmailed and controlled by Putin. Right.
If you look at that, and that's our Russiagate nugget of the week.
If you want to tune back, I got one for you every single week because
I know, right?
Yeah.
And let's just, without any further ado, let's go to the great interview we have lined up for you today. This week marks the 20-year anniversary of the opening of Guantanamo. And we have an amazing guest who's talking to us, Mansoor Adayfi. He's one of the first prisoners who was brought to Guantanamo. He's the author of Don't Forget Us Here, Lost and Found at Guantanamo. He was held for over 14 years without charges as an enemy combatant. He was released to Serbia in 2016, where he still struggles to make a new life for himself and to shed the stigma of being a suspected terrorist. You can follow Mansoor on Twitter at MansoorAdayfi. And you can find out more about him at his website, MansoorAdayfi.com. Welcome, Mansoor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, too, for having me today.
And, of course, this week is a solemn anniversary. It's been 20 years since the opening of Gitmo. And you wrote a very moving book about your experiences there. Don't Forget Us, Lost and Found in Guantanamo. Wanted to know, before we got into your book, which is really excellent, if you could talk about the group of Guantanamo prisoners that you're part of. There's 7 of you who published an open letter calling on Joe Biden to close Guantanamo and to enact an 8-point plan that you came up with. So can you talk about what that plan is?
Yeah, first of all, before we talk about the 8-point plan, let us give a little introduction to Guantanamo. As you know, Guantanamo, yesterday was the 20th anniversary of Guantanamo, 7,306 days. Today is 7,307 days today. So basically, Guantanamo was created and established outside of the justice system, housed around 800 men, 50 nationalities, 20 languages. The youngest detainee was only a few months old. The oldest one was 105 years old. 20 years of indefinite detention, 20 years of torture, abuses, 20 years of injustice. 20 years of violation of the basic human rights. So basically, people or men at Guantanamo, they have no right, they have no access to any justice. Now, for administration, work have been since the opening of Guantanamo. You know, George W. Bush, the one who established Guantanamo. Then President Barack Obama, who wanted to close the detention but failed. Then Trump, who promised to keep it open, and he did. And now we are with Mr. President Biden, who said he will close it, and we are still waiting to see some kind of tangible steps. So last year, when after Biden was elected, we sent a letter signed by 6 former Guantanamo detainees, suggesting a roadmap for the closure of Guantanamo. Based on our experience, based on our research, because I have been researching Guantanamo for the last few years. It was part of my graduation degree, bachelor degree in management. My thesis was about rehabilitation and reintegration of former Guantanamo detainees into social life and the labor market. So we sat and we talked about what the best way to close Guantanamo, because it's a matter of, well, if they wanted to close Guantanamo, it can be closed, but unfortunately, Guantanamo turned to be a political game between the Republicans and the Democrats, and it's not about humanity. It's not about justice. It's not about the prisoner there. It's about the political gain they can get from it. Mostly the Democrats hesitate to do it because it might fire back, or sometime, you know, the Congress made many obstacles for the closure of Guantanamo. But until yesterday, we received the news that at least 18 detainees or prisoners had been cleared for release. And so far, Biden administration have released only 1 prisoner to Morocco last year. And I hope, 18 have been cleared. This is the right step toward the closure of Guantanamo.
People watching this or listening to this are going to be hearing, a lot of people are going to be hearing your story for the first time. So I wanted to just ask you to go back and take us how you landed in Guantanamo. You were born and raised in Yemen, and you went to Afghanistan to conduct some research, and that landed you in Guantanamo. So if you could go back and tell us that story.
I'm Mansoor Adayfi, former Guantanamo detainee, a Yemeni citizen, and now I am nowhere. Basically, I was raised in a rural village in Yemen on the mountain, a very conservative family, and a tribe society. Was it like at a tribe society, as you know? Now in Yemen, still like the tribe system still strongly exists. At age of when I finished my secondary school, I moved to the city to finish my high school, and from there I started interacting with the world, basically, because where I live in the village, we had no electricity, no running water, no any kind of basic infrastructure there. It's just basically tribe society. So the city was a new world. From that, I started, finished my high school, and I was really interested in learning, in studying computer science. Although at that time, there was no any kind of education about technology in our education system. It's corrupted, and still it is. So we had only one private university called University of Science and Technology. And it was really hard because it was really expensive. Part-time, I used to study as one of the institute beside my high school. I studied history and like Arabic language. The head of the institute, he had like one of the most influential characters at that time. So he used to give some recommendation letters to students to go study in Gulf countries, like in Qatar or Saudi Arabia, other countries, and you can get like free scholarship to study there. So I tried with him. 2002, and by the end of 2000, I think, in 1999, 1998, 1999, there was really a strong presence of Al-Qaeda, especially when Osama bin Laden, at that time, there was like a vacuum in the media, and it was a lot of attention to Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and the fight, as you said, the fight between Osama bin Laden and the United States. Most people talking about 9/11 or aftermath, but they don't actually talk about what happened before 9/11. It is really important to talk about what happened before 9/11 to understand why 9/11 happened in the first place and what caused that to happen. And so basically, one of the things that happened in Yemen at that time, the attack on USS Cole. And
this is the USS Cole. This is a U.S. warship that was docked in the port of Yemen. Yes, attacked by a suicide bomber.
Yeah, it was also Al-Qaeda. And at that time, it brought a lot of attention to Yemen. And so the head of the institute, he was one of the authors and one of the most influential, Sheikh Muqbil Rahmatullah Alayh. He was asked by Saudi government and Yemeni government to write a book about the new groups, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and those groups, because, from the government, they wanted to stop this ideology from spread. So he wanted to write a book about it. But at that time, as you know, in our countries, we had no internet, there is no access to media, no access, basically, if you need to conduct research, you have to travel, you have to collect information, books, and everything you need to do about group. So I was sent as a research assistant with other men to do some kind of like research about in Afghanistan, about Al-Qaeda and Taliban and other groups, and to know more about that people, because it's just a normal research.
And the promise to you was that if you did this, this would help you get into university, right?
Yeah, it was my dream to finish my college in computer science and university, and because I really love the life in the city and the world, because when you live your entire life in a small, tiny, real village away from everything, it became like when I arrive in the city, wow, this is the life, electricity, building, cars, like everything. As was fascinating by computers, because when during my time, there was like advertisement giving courses in computer, all the like those, and so I saved some money and I want to take one of the course in those, but it was expensive. I took really it was like twice a week, 1 hour, but spent a lot. Like I couldn't afford to buy a computer, but I couldn't wait to go there and just sit in front of that machine, like listen. And it was like fascinating when you listen and working on those, learning about it, and especially when you go to those different programs. So I was like, this is my dream. So it was so heavy. It's going to take a few months, get back and travel. Also I wanted to travel, to be honest, to know more about the world. I'm like curious, energetic, hyperactive. So all right, in Afghanistan, we started doing our research, interviewing, researching, and when I arrived in Afghanistan, I was like shocked and surprised, I arrived in Pakistan, it's like also different world. When I arrived in Afghanistan, I felt, wow, I couldn't believe, like you feel you live in the mid-centuries. Literally, the building, the people, the way of clothing, the hardship of life, you can see it in the people, on the people face. So the only thing that connects you to the future, the cars, the moving cars. Other than this, it's like different era, like different time. So when I arrived in Kabul, I could see the scars of the civil war that left the country, torn down buildings, damaged buildings everywhere. Then one day we were in the restaurant. We heard that there was an attack in the United States. Airplanes flew into a tower. I mean, someone told me it's 110. It's a big problem. I said like, oh, okay. In Yemen we had 100. We had like 25 floors, but we didn't even allow it to go near that building. It's like it's owned by one of the private airplane companies. So we guess you saw it, but I never felt, oh, what does it mean to be in like even like 10 building floors or something? So we didn't pay much attention to what happened, because in Afghanistan there was no any kind of like media or TVs, and that media that happened outside of Afghanistan, people even didn't feel it, because it's like, as I told you, feel in different area of the world. I was staying at one of the charity organizations who work for Saudi government, work like as a charity for logistic, providing some kind of like relief support for the, like there is severe poverty in Afghanistan. Then after 9/11, the charity, the head of the charity received some kind of instruction from Saudi Arabia that he should liquidate everything and leave as soon as possible. And so basically, one of the guys I was with he told me, so we have to leave, and we're going to liquidate everything to send all the stuff we have to the hospitals, to the people who needs. We're leaving. However, he was visiting one of the Qunduz city, like you have staff for the hospital there.
Qunduz, yeah.
Yeah, and he said we cannot wait 2 weeks for airplane, because it was like every 2 weeks the flight. And I said, we can't really take a few hours to get there by the car. And it was a new car, blue Toyota, beautiful car. We load everything into the car, and we travel. And we were ambushed by one of the warlords, because after 9/11, there was like switching loyalties between because United States and its allies starting buying people with money and so on. As you know, in those societies, people switching loyalties for money, and it's kind of like a process of war. So they were interested in our car basically from the beginning, because they saw a new car, and this is our car now. This is my car. The warlord, this is my car. It's not your car. And they knew that person who worked for years for the charity organization, and they said, okay, now we're going to let you go. Then we were sold to another warlord who sold us to the American for bounty money. That when American came to Afghanistan, they threw flyers offering a large bounty of money if anyone who can bring any foreigners, especially Arabs. So I was sold as Al-Qaeda commander, 9/11 insider. Then I was taken to the black site, a 1019 in the black site, basically. And I was interrogated to be Egyptian general who, money laundering, traveling, planning Nairobi and Dar es Salaam attacks, and a lot of things. I admitted to everything, because under the torture, no sleep, no beating, no food, cold, naked, hanging. I mean, it's one of the worst experience. But the problem was I didn't have the details to give them.
And these are Americans torturing you and interrogating you, and they're asking you. They think you're an Egyptian commander of Al Qaeda.
Yes. Then yes, basically. And I was so.
And at first, did you deny being the person who they were accusing you of?
Yeah, of course. My friend told me when he saw the Americans, like, don't worry, everything will be okay, because Americans are here. And they understand, they are not like those savages, or like, especially when we talk about it in some Arab countries. He said, no, they are not like Arab savages. They know who we are, and they go, then let's go. We have nothing to do with it, with anything.
Where was your friend from who said that?
Saudi, basically, yes. And when we end up in the hand of the Americans, it was one of the worst experience, and end up like, though especially when the CIA came, they had no information about the people in Afghanistan, no profiles, no photos, no names, nothing. And anyone can suspect doing anything. Anyone is a suspect, basically. And as you know, like war on terror, it just fire back. It's war of terror. And Bush administration misused and abused 9/11. So after the black site, I was transferred to Kandahar detention. Again, another way of interrogation, another people, many countries, many French, British, different countries, different delegation, different interrogators. I mean, then to Guantanamo, another story. This is my story. How, in short words, I mean, the process. If you read the book, is just different journey.
Yeah. And can I just ask one question before you go on to the next chapter, which is that you were America was offering money for people who were allegedly involved in Al Qaeda or part of the Taliban. But was there any verification process for this, or all people had to do was like word of mouth and say that's the guy, that's a bad guy?
No, I mean, like, if you go back to the Seton Hall University report, ACLU, and other reports, that 86% of the prisoners at Guantanamo were either mistaken identity or sold for bounty money. American didn't do any kind of like verification, or because they have no idea. They have no profile, no names. They have wanted this for like around 25 or something. Other than this, if I told you that we're going to talk about Guantanamo, the youngest detainee was only 3 months old. The oldest was 105 years old. So basically, those men who were brought to Guantanamo, they weren't in the battlefield, like fighting and holding gun slogan. They were brought from different parts of the world. We are talking about over 50 nationalities, 20 languages spoken. People were brought from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Bosnia, Mauritania, United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Africa. Many countries handed those men either for money or for cooperation with the United States, because as you know, George W. Bush, he said either with us or with the terrorists. Basically, he divided. Like, if you are not on our side, you're our enemy. So, and they launched what they call global war on terror, and anyone who can be suspected can be detained and imprisoned, and So what happened? That what happened like many cases. So. The majority of the detainees weren't in Afghanistan even, because Guantanamo, it's a unique case. It's not like people were in the battlefield, they're holding guns and fighting, and so no, it's not. That's not the case. They were bringing like Al-Qaeda suspect or terrorist suspect and anyone, and people took a chance, especially for some countries in Pakistan, Afghanistan, other countries. Millions of money. Who can reject that? Even if there is, I think the former Pakistani prime minister, he wrote a book, I think on the front line or something, about how Pakistan handed Arabs who were foreigners who were in Pakistan, or around like exchange were over $400 million because Pakistan needed that money. Basically, this is the case.
So you were saying earlier that at first you were denying being involved with Al-Qaeda or any terror group, but eventually the torture just continued, that eventually you just started telling them what they wanted to hear?
Of course, under the torture, I mean, they wanted to hear what they wanted to hear. This is the problem. This is if you look at the photos I sent you by 2000, the beginning when Carol Rosenberg, the reporter who worked on Guantanamo cases since 2002, when she compared the files when we arrived at Guantanamo, they classified me as Al-Qaeda 9/11 insider, Al-Qaeda commander, the commander of the 55th Brigade by 2016.
Who's supposed to, by the way, be a middle-aged man, right? And you're 19, 20 years old.
Yes, I was 19. Yeah. So basically, by 2016, they said actually it is unclear if he actually joined Al-Qaeda, and none of Al-Qaeda members or Al-Qaeda leaders recognize him as member of Al-Qaeda. And we had a long argument and fight with the government about this. I said, either you see he's not Al-Qaeda or he's Al-Qaeda. Yeah. Basically, they know I wasn't Al-Qaeda. I wasn't involved with any kind like terrorism activity or attacks or any kind of affiliate with any groups. But simply they said, literally, we cannot say we detain an innocent man for around 15 years. Basically, also, they... If they don't like you, they won't release you. If they don't like you, they will never clear you. My behavior within the camp, they said I behaved ironically, and they do like my behavior because hunger strike, fighting, resisting, fighting to stop the torture, the interrogation, and so on. And it's just, I think any of you, any man, any woman, any free person would do the same. If you end up in a place, indefinitely detained, tortured, abused, everything around you designed to break you. And where I come from as a tribe man, we live by our code. We live with our values, faith. We have by our tribe code, transparency, honor, courage, hospitality, sacrifice. This is our life. So I was behaving the way I was raised. They took that behavior as instigating, as they even accused us to be Al-Qaeda cell operating within Guantanamo, believe it or not. And the problem was our argument with them, what you do here is wrong. And the way we just reacting to whatever you throw at us. And if you react, if you say, I'm in pain or scream, you are a bad person, you're a terrorist. So when I look at that way behavior, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you did. In their eyes, by default, every Muslim is a terrorist. It's the way it is. Even now, I still feel it that way because as you see how George W. Bush and his species and the administration misused and abused 9/11, basically. Now we are talking about 20 years after what they call war on terror. There is no justice for 9/11. There is no justice. They abuse American justice system. Today we are talking about Guantanamo because it is the way how those people abuse American justice system by fighting for Guantanamo. We are actually fighting also for American justice system. And Guantanamo is staying in American history and policy.
So it's been 20 years since Gitmo was open. You were among the first wave of prisoners there. Tell us about how you got there, what you remember about your journey to Gitmo from the CIA black site.
Arriving at Guantanamo, I remember that moment when they took the hood of my head. It was a journey of 40 hours on the air from plane to another. They had a sign around my neck, beat me, because anyone who deemed to be big fish, what they call it, they were treated even differently, even in the journey. The journey was also part of the interrogation process. They keep us. They used to keep us as much as long as in the air, to keep you disoriented, confused. So when you arrived, you are full of fear and confused, and no sleep, no eat, no food. You cannot even use the toilet. So when you go to the interrogation, they think, this is the point, is going to throw everything. When I arrived at Guantanamo, the journey was tough. When we arrived, they have what they call process station. When we landed, they took us on a ferry. It was nice to feel the sea beneath us. Yeah. We were received by the Marines, who was screaming, shouting, and beating all the way from as soon as we arrived until we brought to the facility, what they call the process station. At the process station, it was crazy. We couldn't stand because there's no way you can stand because the cold in the airplane, the beating, we're sitting on the floor all the time, and unable to. I wasn't able to walk. So two of the soldiers hold me up, and they start cutting my clothes like so fast, and they can injure you, didn't care. Although we're like while shackled, chained, hooded, there was like my mouth was duct taped, and everything is covered basically. And I was stripped naked, and they threw me to somewhere, like a bag, and I feel like water, and there's a lot of soap, and there's like large cleaning brooms actually cleaning our bodies for those. It was crazy. Everything was happening so fast, a lot, and even like my mind couldn't even like keep up with the process. It just, you don't know where you're like lost. You're nowhere, no status, no emotion. You cannot see, you cannot hear, you cannot smell, you cannot talk. You just feel the pain. Even your body refused to feel anymore. And because every cell in our bodies were like screaming. Then we're taken from place to place. A lot of things they used to like hours and hours sitting in our knees. They force us, like 2 guards force you to sit in your knees. Then circle to the interrogation. Then I was dragged to my cell naked, to the cage actually, in a cell. As soon as the guard landed on me, it was, they put me on the floor and they sat on me, like 6 of them. It's like a message, they treat people. And they start unshackling me, and they took the hood, the goggles, the earmuffs. I was left duct tape, it was like I couldn't see because bright light and being in the dark for long, it just like, and all of a sudden, really bright light. And also, my eyes were swelling from the beating, really big like frog. Took me a few hours to get like to see around me, and all I can see, you know, I was asking like, am I in hell? Am I dead? It like is already dead because everything was happening so fast, so cruel. New place, new people. We can hear shouting, guard shouting at everyone. And when I looked, I could see only orange figures around me, large of orange figures. Second day, I could see all of us like shaved, you know, bruise everywhere, blood, and you can see, you know, the beating was really hard and like swelling faces, split lips, bruises everywhere. Actually, some of the brothers couldn't even walk with the beating. So this is the first moment and night at Guantanamo, and I didn't know where I was or until when what was going to happen to us. And we're just waiting for the interrogators. Everything was designed that for interrogators to come to, they can start to extract the most important information that will save the galaxy from those, the worst of the worst. We were deemed to be the worst of the worst terrorists, killers, the most vicious killers on planet. So some of the guards were even terrified of us because they told them, if you take your eye 1 second, they can split your neck. They are highly trained, professional killers. You know, when I started learning about that stuff, I was laughing and feeling bad, laughing, sometimes crying. You know, when I was talking to the guards later on, 30 years, I said, guys, look, I am a fucking professional, vicious killer. Be careful. Come on, for you, I know one. Because the guard lived with us for years and years. They know who we are. They know our fights. They know our behavior. Because when someone lived with you for a year, they watch you 24 hours, eating, drinking, shitting, whatever you do. So then, guys, do you know who I am? Yeah, you are 441. I said, no, I'm not 441. I'm the worst of the worst. Yeah, come on, man. Said, yeah, this is the truth. So we start making joke about it because even the guards, the first time they came to Guantanamo, so when they first came, they were so terrified. They used to take them to 9/11 Square and told them the one who did this at Guantanamo. And be careful, they are killers. They are, you know, smart. They like, so the guards were terrified. So when the guards used to arrive, they say, hi guys, welcome. I have been waiting for you guys. And I can see the guards, like some of them get shocked, you know, someone like, I'm waiting for you guys. I said, nice to meet you. And so sometimes I try to break, you know, this kind of like a barrier of fears, just to tell them the message. That's who we are, no people. You know, a few months, take maybe a couple months, the guards started realizing these and the people they were told about. So with many of the guards, we forged really strong friendship because as a soldier, as a trained soldier, you can spot who's bad, who's good, and who's a killer, who's not. So sometimes I told them, he is like your general 441. Come on, man, this is paper. I said, this is who I am. I'm a Qaeda general. I'm a commander now. So we developed also some kind of sense of humor at Guantanamo with each other, brothers and guards. What I can say also that not just detainees who are victims of Guantanamo, also the guards and some staff who also were victims of Guantanamo machinery. They forced to do things they don't believe on, and they were forced to torture and abuse some prisoners. You know, I don't want to be in their shoes because not anyone can stood or no one, like they have, like as military, they have to follow their orders. I'm not making an excuse for them, but what I want to say that even those people were victims. American justice was also victim of the policy that conducted Guantanamo. Guantanamo is an idea that it's not just a place, you know, that created outside of the legal, of the system, of the justice system. And Guantanamo represents, as you know, for the last 20 years, oppression, injustice, lawlessness, abuse of power, and injustice in most part, and 20 years of indefinite detention. Imagine if 18, 20, or 25 years or men kidnapped, American, basically, kidnapped, tortured, abused, indefinitely detained, punished for practicing the religion, how American would react if like people were Americans, not the Arabs. So basically, where they like all of us were Muslims. And as you see, there is a lot of secrecy around Guantanamo. The government tell you what they want to tell you. So I wrote my book, try to take the readers inside Guantanamo to tell stories about the life we shared there. I intentionally tried not to focus on torture or abuses, just to bring mostly on the life of within Guantanamo.
And to hear the rest of the interview, please go to usefulidiots.substack.com. That was amazing. That was inspiring. That was infuriating. I can't believe that these people, after going through the literal torture that they went through, I can't believe that the United States is, well, I can. They're so shameless that they don't do anything to help make any amends, pay any reparations. I mean, these people leave this torture center and they still don't even have their basic rights. They should be not having to worry about any of that stuff at all. I mean, they should be receiving reparations. It's disgusting.
It's hard to put into words, and one thing, there's so much like criminality to discuss when you're talking about Guantanamo that it gets overlooked that this gulag is in Cuba.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not Cuba that is torturing prisoners. It's the US that is torturing prisoners. And why is the US even doing it there? Cuba doesn't want to have a US torture site in its country. It's because the US basically has taken that territory from Cuba and won't give it back. It's just one more absurdity of this whole thing. And it's just amazing that anybody in the US government can even think about opening their mouth to lecture other people about human rights when stuff like this is still happening and people like Mansoor have not been compensated for the hell that they went through.
The combination of this and Julian Assange basically means that the United States has to just should never open its mouth about anything related to human rights, civil liberties, free press. I mean, it's a disgusting Kafka-esque system that they created. They haven't done anything to acknowledge that mistake. The people who survive there are still living incredibly difficult lives. It's like the opposite of what should be happening. And also, the Center for Constitutional Rights, we should give them a shout out for all the work that they did. And the late Michael Ratner, rest in power, who was the head of the CCR, the Center for Constitutional Rights, and also did so much for the brothers, as Mansoor calls them, the brothers of Gitmo, the men inside of Gitmo. And big wag of the finger, if we're going to give them a shout out, we should give a wag of the finger to the Red Cross, which, as Mansoor details in his book, was really there just to legitimize Gitmo. They didn't speak out on behalf of the prisoners. They would just tell them to drink water and eat their food so they wouldn't drop dead. So they got a lot of donations. They should just pay those donations forward to the survivors of Gitmo, who they sold down the river, who they threw under the bus.
And maybe Barack Obama should give some of his vast fortune to the prisoners of Guantanamo who, despite his promises to close Guantanamo, it stayed open under his watch. And he's since leaving office become a very, very wealthy man. So he can afford to compensate the people whose torture he oversaw. He
should actually just get out of his Martha's Vineyard mansion and let Cage, that organization that Mansoor is part of, they should take that over, have a residency program there, an artist in residency, or just it's absurd. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And then, of course, as you guys discussed, Yemen, of course, is under attack by Saudi Arabia with the support of the United States. Joe Biden he didn't stop that war. He kind of rebranded it. But it's on top of all that he's gone through. He can't see his family. Serbia. I mean, he has to be in Serbia of all places.
Unbelievable. And yet look at him. He still maintains such a warmth. And he still, as he talked about, maintains his humanity. It's
and optimism.
It's pretty inspiring. It puts things, it helps put things, not that he's there for us to get perspective on our own lives. That's not, but it does help. It does. So very grateful to him for joining us and his book is really something special.
Yeah, it's a
I
great
recommend
read.
it.
Yeah. All right. So make sure that you become Substack supporters, because then you'll get to access the extended interview that we did with Mansoor. And also you get to access the shows without any ads if you become Substack supporters. That's just at usefulidiots.substack.com. Also, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, which is youtube.com/usefulidiots. Hit subscribe and hit the bell. Also, another reason that you're going to want to join Substack is that we're starting to release the audio of our Monday mornings live streams. So that means that, as people may know, on Monday mornings, we do a Monday morning, MONDAYMOURNING, which is where we go over the Sunday morning shows that we watch so you don't have to. So we're going to start releasing the audios from that for Substack subscribers. Also, major breaking news coming from Spotify. You can now rate and review. So please go and rate and review us on Spotify. Leave a nice review. Give us a bunch of stars. Do the same thing on iTunes if you haven't already done that. Wherever you listen to us, you can still do it all over the place. Like, I listen to stuff on iTunes, but what I would do if I were not me, well, actually what I still can do as me, because there's no law against this, I'll go into Spotify, leave a rate and review there. And I'll do iTunes, leave a rate and review there. And you guys can
Wow.
all
So,
do the
Katie,
same.
you're saying me as the average audio content consumer, I have the opportunity now to not just rate and review Useful Idiots on iTunes, but on a whole different platform, Spotify as well. So Spotify won't report me to the police if I don't even listen regularly on Spotify, but I still leave a great review for Useful Idiots. Wow.
Right, because the review won't be like, I love listening to Useful Idiots on Spotify. That would be illegal to say.
That would be illegal. Yes.
We can't suborn perjury.
We can't encourage that. No.
Yeah,
no,
we can't
cannot.
encourage that. But you can say, this is a great show.
Yeah. And if you do commit perjury, we are not liable for your legal fees.
Right. No, we're not.
And whatever punishment that may ensue, including possibly being sent to Guantanamo Bay. I have to warn people about that.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
That's a possibility. Can't wait for Mansoor to see this out show. Hello, thank you so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For full episodes and extended interviews, please subscribe at usefulidiots.substack.com. You can subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/usefulidiots for clips, live streams, and full episodes. Also, subscribe to us wherever you find your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod and use the hashtag UsefulIdiotsPod. Join us Mondays at 10 a.m. for the Useful Idiots Monday Morning Show, where we discuss the Sunday morning news shows so you don't have to watch them.